Huge new high. Oil crashes, but Bitcoin doesn't believe it. What should you believe? I'm your host, Bill Noble. We will go through all of this, all the macro markets, and figure out why Bitcoin isn't buying this whole, oil's down, everything's great in AI story. I mean, it is great over there in AI with Caterpillar and Palantir earnings, ramming stocks higher, shorts, and I have no doubt it's the plunge protection team, goosing equities and sitting on oil. Be that as it may, what is the breakout level for Bitcoin? Like when does crypto join this party? Or will it be just Zcash? Will it just be encrypted Bitcoin after this hack? We will also check out TA for stocks, bonds, and crypto, as well as go through a Patreon technical analysis report from July 27th, where, drum roll, paid Patreon users got a report that gave you the low in Nasdaq to the tick. So our little model that combines Lux Algo and Alpha Intelligence nailed the low in Nasdaq. We will go over that report today. Also, we will go over how that impacts Bitcoin. Like, what is the level in Bitcoin, and what does it take to get this market moving again? Along with the believability of everything that sovereigns want to tell you about stocks and oil and the yen, right? In other words, 2 days ago, everything was great. They were pushing down the dollar, oil crashed, and stocks ripped. Sounds awesome, right? Okay. Well, is Bitcoin not moving because of the 4-year cycle? We're going to go through a big PowerPoint discussing the 4-year cycle and perhaps what really matters, because we all know that I hate the 4-year cycle. And I'm honestly, just being transparent, a little jealous that these characters wound up being right, at least for the moment. But we're going to discuss what really matters and how all that gets here for crypto. Obviously, we're not there yet. I would love to tell you that Bitcoin should follow S&P. It should. And the only reason it wouldn't is if whatever's going on in S&P has been goosed by Uncle Sugar, along with some obviously good news. And after the elimination of excessive leverage positioning, everyone gets short and then it smokes higher. This has been the story of equities for I don't know how long. I think it feels like 15 years. But again, we're going to go over how all this impacts crypto. All right. The first thing I want to share is this. So everybody has kind of figured out that the only way crypto gets the liquidity that it needs, hint, hint, is either this AI debt bubble bursts and somebody gets caught with bad debt, okay, or AI creates a level of productivity in society that allows for a reduction of inflation, assuming oil stays down. But it is funny, from sharing that article, I forgot to read, like Arthur Hayes is now on this. Me and Toby in the YouTube member area were on this, leverage. If there's a problem with AI, it's not with the AI companies necessarily. It's with, frankly, whoever owns the AI debt. The answer to that would be you, because they stuck it in your 401k, which to me makes the case for Bitcoin all by its lonesome. Because, how did you, or how did big funds get this sludge debt in their portfolio? And then to add to the indignity, they're rallying all the stocks, although the banks and Goldman did not participate really. I mean, it did, but nah, it wasn't a massive new high along with the S&P. So, Bitcoin is clearly the better alternative for us macro crypto heads. What else is new? Sounds like we're drinking Kool-Aid with our coffee. But I also have to take the other side and question. It's like, wait a minute. Hey, guys, should Bitcoin be following S&P? Should that be like transpiring soon? Or, how does that exactly work? So we're going to go over all of that in a big PowerPoint deck. But first, I just want to give some love to our Patreon members. This is a technical analysis report as of July 28th, right, where we're discussing the Nasdaq diamond formation. And the bottom line is this was a pullback wearing a bear costume by the flushes while 27,200 in Nasdaq futures hold. And then lo and behold, I come over here and the low in Nasdaq, right, was something like, I don't know, it's like 27,206 or 27,200, right? 202, 27,202. So we got the low, and then the question is, what's the next big level in Bitcoin? Okay, well, so not to keep you in total suspense, because we're going to go through this whole 4-year cycle thing as well. This is the level in Bitcoin for TikTokers that has to break, right? It's something like 66 and change. And of course, in the meantime, Bitcoin just kind of sits here in possibly the most boring range ever, hoping it's this from a TA point of view. I mean, the alpha intelligence signals were at the low, and now we're just kind of sitting here. I don't know. This is like roughly maybe a 38% retracement, 50% retracement. So Bitcoin retraced 50% of its recent up move, and now we're just sitting here trying to figure out if the move up in stonks and the move down in oil is actually real. Is it real? I got to think if sometimes there's a part of me thinks that if the move in stocks and oil was real, Bitcoin would be at 80K because, the Fed would be off the hook on oil. The Fed could stop this, frankly, this hawkish insanity. Because I think if they raise rates, they're not only not going to stop NASDAQ and not going to stop inflation, they're just going to destroy the little people again up more. I don't know. They're going to do it to make the bond market happy, and the bond market's going to want more and more and more. But that's just me, right? I think what the Fed wants to do, which is what every government wants to do, is print. Because as we have detailed, and we'll go over this later, I think the Japanese have lost control of their currency, and we have to deal with it. We have to manage it now. We have to do it. And the only way we can keep the dollar down is to print. Now, of course, U.S. long bonds, which, I've gone on and on and on and on about how important this is, not just, for stonks, but for Bitcoin as well. You've got two alpha intelligence buy signals here. As with NASDAQ, you kind of had this selling climax, and then bonds started doing better. This is Bitcoin's best friend right here. Like if this turns out to be an actual real rally in bonds with rates calming down, this goes back to the believability of oil and stonks. Like, do you believe oil is going to stay down? And do you believe the move in stonks is, not due to some kind of idiotic manipulation? I know Palantir and Caterpillar were out, so that's good. But if this is as positive as it could be, Bitcoin should be way higher. I was like, how did we nail the low in Nasdaq? Like if I told you we were going to nail the low in Nasdaq and Bitcoin would sit still, I would have even said that's crazy. If we nailed the low in Nasdaq, when Nasdaq turned around and went up, Bitcoin should have gone to 70, but it didn't. Okay. And, we'll discuss why, because I think Bitcoin has kind of a psychological problem. And let's discuss the psychological problem in Bitcoin or crypto in general. Okay. So the clock is broken. The 4-year cycle has got the narrative, but I say there's another issue, right? And of course, you'll know what the other issue is when I say it, and you'll agree. But I think the reason Bitcoin stinks is because everyone in crypto has been handed the same date. Like everybody is now telling you it's October. It's October, right? Because of the 4-year cycle. Now, this week, in one breath, a lot of things happened that, let's just say they weren't the cycle. Oil fell out of bed. Orange Man says, get gas prices down. The U.S. government had to step in, point number 2, and intervene in the yen, causing the dollar to fall from 164 to 155. It looks like a mini crash if you look at it on a zoomed in daily chart. All right. The long bond interest rates went way up. They're trying to normalize, but the big event was that, long-term interest rates got to their highest level since 2007, exceeded it by a lot. And of course, everyone has forgotten that the Senate is supposed to vote on the Clarity Act before they go on vacation on the 10th. So that's a catalyst for crypto. I think, Bitcoin and the big cryptos are outside the Clarity Act, but whatever. There's a catalyst there. And, Bitcoin just sat there through all of this. What's up with that? Is that the cycle? I don't know. You could argue the old clock has been replaced, right? It was like the halving and then 4 years, and then you have a bottom and you count the days on your calendar. I think the new clock is liquidity comes into the system, because you could definitely argue they put liquidity into the system to goose stocks. I know there was good news, but wait till you see the S&P chart. Okay, liquidity comes in, risk appetite returns, Bitcoin moves. You got to watch bonds, oil, and flows. So the October consensus. So the bottom arrives sometime in September. The turn is in October. The price target is 41K. A lot of edgy crypto influencers like Princess and whatnot had this a long time ago. Now I think this number is consensus. There's been nothing to talk about in Bitcoin except Bitcoin's going to 40K. So don't get involved until then. People are just like, yeah, okay, we'll just wait a month. And of course, these guys have they have a point, right? Last 3 bear markets, the days from the top to the bottom, up here, the first line, last 3 bear markets, 400 days from the top to the bottom, 363 and 376. So, 12 months after the top, you get the bottom. Days from one top to the next, it's like 1,400 days. Each crash is smaller than the last one. Seems to be holding up, and there's a minor metric that still has not gotten to its, capitulation point. Now, miners are hurting. They are. Hash price is near record lows. Network hash rate is down 25% since October, and we will talk about October 2025 because that was the black swan event. People are waiting for one. It may have already happened. The Puel multiple, that's a minor stress indicator, is at 0.7. Normally it gets to 0.5 when all the miners give up. It's not there yet. Public miners are losing around $19,000 on every coin they produced in the first quarter. So, I mean, miners in many ways are getting smoked, and that's not the question. Okay. Now, Bitcoin's had 3 bear markets. 2 of them involved Fed tightening cycles. So, I understand that this is super catchy, and guys who have this on YouTube are just racking up followers, but really the last 2 bear markets in Bitcoin were associated with tightening liquidity. The dates match up well, but the crashes are shrinking. 90% and 80% and 78%. Bitcoin is now down 54% from its highs. But we're not really taking into account the ETF, which is funny because the ETF is, the flows are negative. People are coming out of it, yet Bitcoin has not yet melted down, knock on wood. So, all of these other instruments, all these other bear markets, don't take into account that everybody now knows, including Charles Schwab and Van Eck and Franklin Templeton, that there is no way crypto doesn't come back because of this dollar debasement trade. There is no way out for any of these sovereigns other than printing. They can try to sell you this tightening rhetoric. They can try to boost the dollar. As one guy I used to talk to said, they're going to boost the dollar and then they're going to dump it on your head. Honestly, the marginal buyer of crypto has changed. It's not just the little guy anymore. So every crash smaller than the last. 2002 off FTX, it was 77%. Right now, it's 54%. If somebody swapped out the engine, would you still expect the same gas mileage? Bitcoin has a different engine. The delayed payoff is what Raoul Paul calls it, because bonds are not cooperating. Oil is not cooperating. ETF flows are not cooperating. And retail decided to get hyper leveraged and buy, 3x levered Kospi ETFs with borrowed money and got smoked. Right? Retail didn't want to play in crypto, so they went over to equities and got smoked over there. And Bitcoin, as somebody, Wealth Ranger says, yeah, it just sits here at 63,000 and doesn't move. The institutional bid is not what we want, right? 2 billion came out in May, right? 4 billion came out in June, right? July was the smallest monthly inflow on record. So people were starting to come back in, but it's like it's a joke. And obviously, based on the S&P price action, people would much rather chase S&P because this isn't moving. They all got washed out of stocks, and then they all had a FOMO back in. It's unbelievable. So, the bullish read for ETFs is that pension funds will rebalance and buy Bitcoin, if there is a puke. So people will be interested in Bitcoin as just a part of diversification. Like, I'll buy a little Bitcoin, I'll buy a little gold, right? That type of stuff. Crypto became a political asset, right? Regulation. Now, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but, Uncle Sugar's got his hand in crypto as well with this Clarity Act thing. Bitcoin may be sitting around waiting to see if they get the Clarity Act done because tokenized assets, the industry is spending millions on the midterm elections, trying to get the rules that it want. They've spent a fortune. They spent a fortune buying politicians, quote unquote, trying to get this done. The Clarity Act passed the House. That's the first part of the American legislature or parliament. It needs 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. That's the other half of our parliament. Republicans have 53 votes, so they need to bring over 7 people from the opposition party who are claiming that the Trump meme coin is the reason they won't support the Clarity Act. And if they don't get it done by August 10th, the third bullet, guess what? You're looking at 2027. And that's probably why crypto's not moving, right? Because crypto is like, okay, well, you know what? Know you guys are having a lot of fun in stocks. And we know oil is false, fake, probably. So, we'll wait. We'll wait. I mean, that's what the crypto world is saying. Naturally, this can change. We'll go over that. Miners didn't give up. They just defected to AI. This is the thing that's different, right? Miners aren't going broke and dumping Bitcoin. And the selling stops, they stop selling, miners, when price goes up, which is weird. The real thing is they maybe sold Bitcoin in Q1 to get into AI. And the selling stops when the building is paid for. Meaning they sold Bitcoin to do an AI build out. And once the AI build out is done, their cash flow will improve. Assuming they don't get caught in some kind of data center glut. The Bitcoin miner boost from AI is real. Okay. Marathon Digital on the right, they sold Bitcoin to retire debt and fund infrastructure. So these Bitcoin miners, the small ones are losing money. The big ones had huge volatility in their stock. It's not clear whether they're over levered or not. But I don't know. I don't buy this 2018 argument that half the miners are going to go out of business and there's got to be some big puke to 40K because the miners are the sellers. The miners already sold. They already sold. The question isn't, are they going to have to sell Bitcoin? The question is any debt that any of these characters have issued, is it any good? And I got a new indicator, an old indicator, but a new indicator, which is the stock of Galaxy Digital. In other words, how do we know that the fortunes of, say, the crypto AI hybrid is going to take off? And of course, you have this giant cup and handle where, as usual, the handle is brutal. Absolutely brutal. I mean, this looked like a perfect rounding bottom. This breakout ran into alpha intelligence topping signals, and this Galaxy Digital went straight down, went from 35 to 18. I mean, Novogratz, it's a good thing he doesn't have hair because he'd be pulling it out. These guys got into Bitcoin and AI data centers with a perfect mix with a crypto hedge fund that had an AI data center business. And not only they made the strategic right decision, they went public and they got no love over their data center business at all because of how much crypto sucked. So if Galaxy can turn around and go up, this would be a surefire signal that crypto can wake up. Like, I think this is the Clarity Act. This is the metric for the Clarity Act, whereas companies like, say Goldman are the metric for like the AI debt. Like if the party continues and the AI debt's fine, Goldman stock will explode. Goldman stock will just keep going up. Right now, Goldman did some participation in this rally after hitting this $1,000 mark, but it's not exactly screaming higher. I think Galaxy is a fantastic metric. You see Galaxy start moving in 10% increments, Bitcoin is going to follow. It is. That's just not. This is not today's trade. Okay. Now again, with miners, not every miner has an AI customer. Okay. Every miner hasn't defected to AI and every miner isn't broke. There's probably a mix. Now, what moved oil? We got to talk about oil. So as one guy refers to it, Just Dario, who's got to be like the funniest guy ever. Okay, he said that the Muppets, that's what he calls sovereigns, are desperate for a victory. There's no confirmation of any of these talks. They have Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, with huge cred on the tape, saying that there's a deal. So when Bessent said it, everyone's like, okay, there must be a deal. It still isn't clear whether that's the case. He did say that, but it's not clear whether that's the case. The last time the Orange Man told oil companies to get gas prices down, oil went straight up. And it is also clear from looking at the Alpha Intelligence chart on oil that every time oil breaks down like this, there's just huge volume. So don't go anywhere for Live TA. By the way, if you like Live TA, this would be a good time to remind you to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. The sell volume that comes in on these downdrafts in oil is epic. It's huge, right? As soon as they come out with these announcements, everybody just, they just mercilessly pound on this thing. You really got to ask yourself, where's all this volume coming from? If it looks like Uncle Sugar and it smells like Uncle Sugar, it's probably Uncle Sugar sitting on the price of oil. Whatever. I don't really care one way or the other. I just want to get a deal done so we can get liquidity moving into the situation and move past this inflation story, right? So Bitcoin can go up. Now, again, if Zcash leads the way, let's talk about Zcash, because I think the 4-year cycle does not apply to Zcash. This is a big deal. Zcash looked terrible for a moment. And now Zcash is up 3% today, right? It's encrypted Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's got this hack problem going on. So, maybe Bitcoin's not the best metric. Maybe this perky Zcash bid shows that, Nasdaq something in crypto is going with Nasdaq. And if that's the case, you think people got caught, you think people got caught on the beach, short or underinvested or whatever. It's guys in S&P, they sold, they went to the beach, and then who would have thought the thing went straight up? We called the low, and I kept that report super quiet because that's for paid Patreon members, right? But the real chain is oil, inflation, interest rates, liquidity to Bitcoin. That's how it's supposed to work. And the last thing, a market discovered, is an honest price. What's the only honest price out there? I think it's the price of Bitcoin. It really is. Now, some people are waiting for 42K. I think we're confusing price with value. This is important. So the price is what somebody will pay today. The value is what you actually own. Rails, custody, regulation, infrastructure, or in other words, the stuff we've been pounding the table on in the YouTube member area. By the way, you can get a $4.95 membership that gets you the use of cool emojis. That's effectively like giving us a $5 super chat per month. You can also get research in Patreon and in the YouTube member area where you get the podcast with Toby. Okay, end of shill. In Amazon in 2001, the stock went down 95% and people laughed. They laughed. At the top in Amazon had to sell to justify the valuation. Amazon had to sell every book in the world 1.5 times. That's how outrageous it got. But they continue to build. Everybody thought the stock was finished. They built the rails, and then 20 years later, obviously you'd be retired if you were in on that. Liquidity should be your first question. Stocks, crypto, property, the cycle isn't dead, but it got demoted to interest rates and global liquidity. Okay. That's all. And at what point do we move past that? Well, it's at the point where we start believing that the liquidity story is coming. And you want to hear some good news? I'll give you some good news. Look at this gold chart. Hey now. I know a lot of guys, my buddy who, if I ever make it, I'm going to drive to his house and give him, as much as I can. This gold chart, he's been looking at this gold chart, and this gold chart, there's a very powerful Lux Algo 3 signal here. Gold had an alpha intelligence buy signal at the bottom, but it's just been kind of sitting here. Now, on the subject of a 3 signal, so in Lux Algo, the links are down below for both this and alpha intelligence, because I'm putting the two of them together. A 3 signal is, fairly high conviction. Like 1 is low conviction, 4 is high conviction, 3 is, it's pretty good. So you have a decent buy signal in gold. And just to kind of put that in perspective, there was a 3 signal in S&P, the day before the melt up. So, this is a momentum kind of thing. Lux Algo bought the second day up, and the third day up was big. So, a 3 signal and a big up move in gold, or a start of an up move in gold. I don't know if you had it in Zcash. You did not have it in Zcash. You do have a 3 signal in Bitcoin. It's just not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Let me see. Yeah, here's the 3 signal in Bitcoin, from a while ago. And then, you get 10 days of nothing. So a 3 signal in stonks results in a vertical rally. Of course, stonks. Of course, because Uncle Sugar wants that higher. They want stocks higher and oil lower. Who knows if they're actually going to get it? Again, in Patreon, we managed to nail the low. We nailed the low. Come on. These new TA reports from this new model, they're working. So come pay us a visit over there. We got a lot of people in the free section. Got a lot of good research over there. And Toby has been talking about AI. She called chips. She called this AI financial thing versus the AI companies. And then the next thing Raoul Paul and Arthur Hayes and all these guys are talking about rails, and we've actually beat them to the punch because we're picking coins for the next move, which could start today. Like Bitcoin didn't buy it the other day, but we gave you the breakout level at 66 and change because we're so nice. We put it on the thumbnail, right? I mean, can you imagine what happens if S&P is making a new high? Oil, I don't know. Oil at least is in a range between 80 and 100, and Bitcoin smokes higher. Because I think if there is anything to say about oil and Bitcoin, is that we are trying to taco out of this thing in the Middle East so hard. Like we want to get out. Just Dario is right to call them a bunch of Muppets. We want out. And if there's a reason for oil to stay down, that's the reason. That no matter, I mean, I know there's this big disruption with supply and et cetera, but it's never going to come to the destruction of everybody's energy infrastructure. It's not going to come down to that. I mean, that's what you believe if you believe in lower oil. or at least oil not exploding. I have no idea if that's the case or not. What I do know is that the administration wants stocks higher. The plunge protection team is leveraging good news from Caterpillar and Palantir. And I just can't believe Bitcoin isn't going to follow. Like, Bitcoin's not buying it right now. The 4-year cycle is to blame. But what happens if you get a Bitcoin breakout? Because you do have, the indignity of what is going on in S&P. You have this going on in Bitcoin with this going on in S&P. I mean, look at the vertical nature of this thing. This was in a range, doing nothing, going down, looked like it was going to zero, hits this big volume pocket from Alpha Intelligence and goes straight up. And they're still buying it now. Now, again, the way to go may be Zcash. Arthur Hayes got out of that. I don't know if he got back in. I wanted to buy it lower, and now it's starting to look like, it's like no one owned S&P and Nasdaq because everyone sold and went to the beach, or got short and went to the beach, or got hedged and went to the beach. Then, of course, it goes straight up because the Caterpillar numbers were amazing. Although I can't believe, we got to pull that chart up for laughs. I can't believe that Wall Street missed the estimates on Caterpillar. It's funny. Caterpillar was down. This is the bulldozer company, construction equipment, for anybody who doesn't know. Sorry. I mean, it was a blowout earnings announcement. Obviously had been going up. Look at it. It ignored all of these Alpha Intelligence sell signals. This, like, right. Then you got the buy signals down here. Then it exploded. Of course, there was this washout first. It's unbelievable, right? This was the power of the FOMO on the way up. And then Caterpillar's like, uh-oh, everything's great again. Make AI great again. I mean, people in equities must be out of their mind, because I don't know who believes this oil thing. I mean, you can believe this oil thing when Bitcoin takes off, because as we talked about in the presentation, the Bitcoin trade is all about liquidity. Gold and silver are going up. That's in some ways, that's the fear trade. In some ways, that's the liquidity trade. I think the reason gold and silver are going up is because the Japanese have lost control of their monetary policy. They have completely lost control. Like, everybody was like, thought it was cool, including me, that, the Treasury had to step in and stop the fall in the yen and stop the rise in the dollar. Here's the chart. Okay. So this is Uncle Scotty coming in and forcing the dollar down and the yen up. Dollar going low is great for stocks. They love it. Dollar going lower is great for risk assets. Now, if they can keep this going down, that's awesome. That's great. It's amazing for Bitcoin. Again, it's another mysterious reason why, the only way, once they start this type of stuff, they can never stop. This is, I think, a point that's not being made. I mean, I know, like, Just Dario has a different point of view. He's like, this is going to blow up, something called the yen carry trade. We talked about that. Once we start printing to save the yen, I don't think we stop. And, I know this is not top of mind, but if we have to print to save the yen and they pass the Clarity Act and stocks are going up, that is a pretty good case for Bitcoin. It's a pretty good case for crypto, or it's a pretty good case for gold and silver. We haven't figured that out yet. And it does remain to be seen, because Bitcoin is disinterested in these legacy manipulations, even though it looks phenomenal. right? And if anything's going to do better, it's Zcash, because maybe everyone's going to look at Bitcoin in this hack and be like, you know what? I'm over this. Let's go buy what no one owns, which is Zcash, right? That kind of makes sense. But the day crypto can participate in any of this, or the day that any of this stuff is actually real, you'll know when it's real. It's the great news about crypto, right? They can have all the funny business they want. They can have funny business in oil, funny business in stocks, funny business in bonds. The real metric is like the financial companies, Galaxy Digital, and of course, Bitcoin. Is this real? You see Bitcoin taking out 66K, all this 4-year cycle talk is over. You want to talk about the dream? Let's talk about the dream. The dream is everyone's waiting for 40K and it breaks out now. Now, of course, the 4-year cycle guys are going, yeah, Bill, you've said this. We've heard this. Everybody's waiting for the breakout that doesn't come. And then when the breakout doesn't come, it goes lower. That's the argument. Now, again, I've argued it's more about liquidity and the rails of the future. We'll see. But the market actually has to validate that by going up. Right now, the only thing that's getting validated is S&P. Gold and silver are both flying. Like, this is undoubtedly going to be the zero hedge headline of the day. I mean, look at, this, I don't know, this might give you some hope in crypto. I mean, I wish it was us, not them, but, silver is coming off its discount zone on its daily chart, for God's sakes. I mean, silver has just been so depressed in this range. We're not the only ones who are miserable, right? This silver range, I mean, it went from 120 to 50. It lost half of its value and just sat down there. Now, that's a pretty good Lux Algo buy signal down there in silver. And it would be nice if, crypto could follow. If you look at total crypto market cap, which has done nothing, obviously, like Bitcoin and everything else, it's got to get going above this particular, I believe this is a GAN line, an altcoin market cap. This is what blows my mind. Altcoin market cap, Web3, is still near the alpha intelligence low, still near the discount zone on Lux Algo, and just cannot move at all. At all. It's amazing. Like, let's buy Caterpillar, let's buy Palantir, let's buy Nasdaq, let's buy S&P. Amazing that nobody thinks these machines are going to transact on crypto. Now, of course, the rationale is stablecoin creation has been falling, and that's the liquidity issue. You don't have money flooding into crypto, right? Clarity Act changes that. If you want to know the bull case for Clarity Act, the bull case for Clarity Act is that it gets money, stablecoins moving back into crypto, period. Right? Everybody can just go, okay, now I can rush in. Schwab, banks, all these players who are afraid of regulators in the future or Congress in the future, they can just be, now we can just go full tilt. Stable coins will flood into the market and it'll be like QE for crypto. There's another guy out there that argues that the productivity miracle, which I don't know if that's here yet, is effectively like something that could goose the market. That's not here yet either. It's not. If you look at Coinbase's stock, like, I don't know, we can look at Coinbase and Circle, I think. Coinbase had a nice alpha intelligence bottom 2 days ago. Nice one, right? And, it's running into resistance. But, these alpha intelligence bottoms, they're like the Mark 13 bottoms back in the day. They don't come around that often. They don't. And, you know, if you're looking at crypto stocks, like, oh my God, I mean, look at how depressed Circle is. Remember this IPO? Like, oh my God, Circle, you know, this thing was like ridiculous when it came out. Now it had a decent earnings release, whatever. How depressed is this stuff? Like Coinbase, Galaxy Digital. Everybody is so down on Michael Saylor. Saylor isn't doing anything that these hyperscalers aren't doing in the billions and billions and almost $1 trillion. So I know it's, you've heard it before, but I mean, how can crypto just stay on the sidelines forever unless it's this oil thing? This is what's so funny, right? If they could just get this geopolitical situation done, I Bitcoin wouldn't just go to 70. Bitcoin would go much higher than that, because you could have the treasury printing money to save the yen and the Fed telling everybody to shut up and calm down, which I know Warsh is dying to come out and tell everybody to shut up and calm down about this tightening thing or whatever. And that's just crazy. You know, he's gonna hike, like if he had hiked rates, you know, maybe this stock recovery wouldn't have occurred, maybe. But the administration doesn't want that. Can you imagine if he hiked rates and crashed Nasdaq? What, you want to take that phone call from the orange man? I don't think so. I don't think so. You can say what you want about his popularity. You can like him or not like him. He's still a super powerful dude. So this hawkish tightening thing, I don't know. I don't believe it. And gold and silver are telling you that there is a problem out there. And it's not oil, at least today. The problem could be with the Japanese and the fact that they've lost control. That can go either way. But if this is not a one-day bounce in gold and silver, I would imagine as soon as you get better liquidity conditions, Bitcoin can explode. Meanwhile, to get off the what ifs, all you can do is get ready. That's it. Because you know what's going to happen. I mean, my phone is ringing. People are like, hey, yeah, can you look at my crypto product? Can you look at my trading platform? Everybody knows the crypto bottom is coming, whether it's the 4-year cycle thing or the liquidity thing changes, if they could really taco out. Hopefully we're not dealing with a Nasdaq debacle in September or October. That still haunts me. But even in the case, all you can do is get ready now. Like, what are you going to buy? What are you going to own when this thing turns? Because this thing is going to turn, because there's enough, as we discussed last time, there's enough legacy funny business to get crypto moving right now. Just we're not buying, just because we're not buying the euphoria now doesn't mean better liquidity conditions can't show up later. But crypto is the liquidity metric. It's liquidity, as Druckenmiller says. It's the Fed. It's liquidity. That's just what matters. The cycle, yeah, that's nice. I mean, I would love to be able to genuflect and buy in October at this point. But what we need is a capital markets friendly market, not just S&P FOMO. Welcoming Zapatis, who joins us first on the stream. Welcome, sir. Steve J is back. Welcome, DeFi guru, right? Thank you for coaching me to use imagination on the charts. Yes, I haven't said that in a while. In research, you get paid for imagination. You get paid for imagination. The Jeski, a member, welcome. Fuzz Crypto is here. Noah, what's going on? Gigi, a Spartan Colonel. Wealth Ranger for you. Bitcoin is going nowhere snooze button. Well, Bitcoin, as the title of the stream goes, is not buying whatever the powers that be are selling. Smash Satoshi is in the house. Welcome to you, brother. Yav, a member, and Wing Raven. You're never too late. You're never too early. You're right on time. And the question is, will Bitcoin follow S&P? Or maybe the real question is, will the powers that be give us something legitimate so we can get the rally going? Because their behavior has led me to believe that once they get done embarrassing themselves, Bitcoin smokes higher. Somebody is in here is talking about, it's the Bitcoin 4-year cycle and the 9-year altcoin depression. Because ETH has been dead. That's the other thing about liquidity. And that's the thing I kind of hope about gold and silver is that gold and silver can revive our ecosystem as people go, But yeah, I mean, the death of ETH could equal the death of crypto if you want to be all morbid, which, I don't. To boldly go is here on crypto. Bullish yet? Bro, we never stopped being bullish. I mean, I know it's a 50% drawdown, but there was a 50% drawdown in 2017. Now, of course, this is gut-wrenching, lasts a long time, and the 4-year cycle guys have got their foot on our throat. Let's face it. We can do PowerPoint and cry all we want. These guys have the psychological advantage. I'm just looking for the psychology to change somehow with either a believable oil story, a believable stock story, silver, or Zcash. Give me something. I think there's more hope now than there has been. Hope is not a tactic, but at least there's something positive to lean on. I mean, can you imagine worrying about Bitcoin if like Nasdaq was still cascading lower? At least that's not the case today. You do, as a footnote, you do have to be mindful that bear market rallies can be unbelievable in stonks, right? Any bear market rally. If you look at Nasdaq, and this even happened back in 2000, and everybody forgets this. Everybody forgets this. That Nasdaq really didn't roll over until S&P and all the other indexes like the Dow caught up. Just saying. Like when you see these kind of moves, you might go, does this make sense? For now, let's assume because of the Caterpillar and the Palantir numbers that they have some sort of justification that and Uncle Sugar wants it higher. Don't think they can't push it higher if they want to. Of course they can. Of course they can. Because that's what they run around and claim and say everything's fine and scare you from voting for, guys who think like the New York City mayor. I mean, that's the tactic, right? Keep stocks moving, try to sit on oil and get out of this situation as much as you can, or just double talk it until after November. Who knows? Point is, when they get done with this, people are going to look back. They're going to look back at this thing with the yen. They're going to look back at this thing in the Middle East and go, WTF. They're going to look at this hyperscaler debt, which may not create a problem. It may not create a problem. But if everybody's going, well, if they can act like this, why is everyone crying that crypto's got a problem? Why is everyone saying Michael Saylor's a problem? Why? What is the problem? Like if these guys can borrow untold trillions and the government can run a $2 trillion a year deficit, how is crypto not exploding? Borrow, 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 borrow. Print, 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 print. Currency's falling apart everywhere. This is the Bitcoin standard. It is. And, if they want to chase S&P, they can chase S&P. They're going to have to chase S&P from the beach. I always said there's always a calamity at the beach. Everybody goes to the beach and everybody picks up their phone and goes, oh no, it's not Nasdaq down. It was S&P up. The good news is, we helped our Patreon members. We helped our members, right? And we kept the emotions out of it. 3 charts, 1 read, Nasdaq, Bitcoin, and Nvidia. I don't know what the low in Nvidia was. I know we published a chart. We were okay with Bitcoin at 63K, and 66 is the breakout, and that is it. That is the market update for today. As Steve is saying, copper and gold, or copper over gold, is looking good, and ETH BTC is maybe going to turn around. We hope so. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Toby and the Eagle King, we will see you soon.